Good evening, everyone. What's going on? My name is Nate, the lawyer, and I am here tonight with my brother Uncivil Law. We're about to start our show. Let me pull this shit down a little bit. It's like I'm trying to get the right. It's like you know when your chair is just like not in the right spot. My kids were playing in it earlier, and it's like I can never get it back in that perfect spot that I had in it before. But me being in here for the next hour and a half will get it melded to the right location. How's everybody out there doing today? Dogboard says, Nate the lawyer, I am getting Springfield MA M1A. NYPD said it should be fine. Detrimental reliance. Detrimental reliance. Hold on. Greetings, Nate from Randy. Hey, what's going on? KCA Randy. Nate, content. Oh, hey, I was on the other day. I was in the other day. What are you guys saying? New to the chat. Hey, Steve Fishman. What's going on? Well, welcome everybody. As you guys know, it's Wednesday. Wednesday night. We are always here with my brother from another mother, who happened to be white and from like a whole nother state. But this is my brother, Uncivil Law.
What?
My brother-in-law.
What up? What?
Oh my God, what's going on, man? How's life been going?
It's pretty good, man. Hitting March, the birds are in the air. The songs are singing. It gives you hope that is renewed. All is well.
Michael says hello. Thanks for all you do. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We try to bring you fair and balanced legal analysis of hot topics, but for some reason, people do not want fair and balanced. They want right, they want left, and anything in between is cast aside to the fountain of forgetfulness. Right? Am I right? Uncivil Law? Am I right?
Yeah, which is particularly interesting in law because especially where I like to play the most is on the edge, where the answers are a little unclear, and the answer is probably somewhere in between extreme positions, more likely than not. So it's like, yeah, something has to be either this way or that way, or it's like we're somewhere in between. It's probably more likely, all things being considered.
It's I always find myself too. I found legal commentary. I think it's fine, but I feel like I'm always in a no man's land, being a centrist in the like in between of two extremes, like two extreme hypocrites. One and both sides, like they blatantly lie about what they believe in one instance and then what they believe in the other instance. And I always find it just so frustrating because it's like nuance is not allowed, right? Any type of nuance that disagrees with someone's point, no matter how relevant it is to the point, it's disregarded. And that's kind of like, if you look at my Twitter feed, that's what it's all about. It's all about, one day someone on the right will say something, and then on the next day they'll say the exact opposite against someone else, and you'll be like,
yeah,
how did this change? What happened?
Well, if you're talking politics rather than law, then yes, I'm much more with you. And it's always hilarious to me because you can predict what both sides are going to say at any given time, given what the dynamics are like, and they're going to switch sides.
Yeah.
And I think it might be 3 years ago at this point, or 2.5 years ago at this point, where I made this prediction about the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, which still hasn't come to pass. But I think at the time I said something like 3 years from now, so I'm running out of time, but COVID gives me an extension. I said 3 years from now, there's going to be a hearing in the Congress about because the issue was the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts were admitting girls into the Boy Scouts. In fact, the first girls have just started graduating from Eagle Scout, as I understand.
Now, hold on. Can even before you move on from that point, it's like, don't we have a Girl Scouts? It's like,
yes. Well,
but go ahead.
Yeah, this is going to be the thing. So 3 years ago, this was when it was starting. The Boy Scouts were admitting girls, and they were going. And so I made this prediction. I said 3 years from now, there's going to be a hearing in the United States House of Representatives, and the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts are going to be there, and the Republicans will say, it's really important that we don't have discrimination on the basis of sex. It's really important that everyone be welcome and there not be any sort of bias or discrimination, and that women are not discriminated against any way. And the Democrats will say, it's really important for us to have women institutions that speak for women, and that women only spaces, and it's important that we have this separation to recognize the importance distinction. It was kind of funny to me because in that chat, I still remember that chat from 3 years ago. People were like, "Oh, you got it backwards." I'm like, "No, I didn't get it backwards." Because if you think about the political incentives, you think about the political incentives of the issue, the parties are going to flip. They're going to flip. And here's what the Republicans will say, and here's what the Democrats will say. So that hasn't come to pass yet to figure out whether or not I'm right. But I'm still as comfortable with the prediction as I was 2.5 years ago when I made it, because it's just predictable once you realize what everyone's starting position is.
It's one thing. I've become more cynical actually since I've become a little older. And one thing I've been really, really struggling with, just as not really as a Black conservative, but as a Black centrist. Who leans conservative, because there are some topics.
Which means you're hard right.
Yeah, who leans conservative, like NRA, being a member of the NRA, they send you like this crazy mail. Do you get this mail from the NRA?
No, I did call the NRA and said stop sending me mail.
Yeah, it's insane.
I'm a patron member, life member, but they haven't sent me mail in quite a long time, because I actually had to call them and say, take me off your mailing list. Because they send you mail forever.
It's like, and it's like what the hell's going on? Get goals like you got this super secret package here, like from the NRA. Like, oh my god, but I've it's funny. Dave Rubin was talking on with Viva and Barnes earlier, and it's something I've always noticed, and I've always been saying it, but it's hard to say. Like, I think when you're termed in terms of race and politics, I do understand that obviously there's an equality issue, and obviously there's always a struggle that we have to overcome. Not minimizing that, but I think the struggle now is divergent viewpoints, because if you are Black, or even if you're a minority, and have a different viewpoint than what the Democrats want you to have, it's okay for them to say racist things about Black conservatives, but it's not okay for conservatives to say racist things about Black liberals. I'll give you an example. I was watching TYT, and the same one Dave Rubin was actually pointing to. And they call Black conservatives coons, racists, sellouts to the race, all that stuff, right? The most vile, racist things that you can possibly say. But they get away with it because these are Black conservatives. And it's sad, because you would think that the Scalia effect would come in, right? The only way to basically don't discriminate against race is to stop discriminating against race. But I just don't know, when did it become acceptable to discriminate against Black people because they're conservatives?
I don't know. I mean, I've been told that all Black people are not a monolith, and they don't think the same. But then you have Black people who don't think the same, and they're cudgeled into thinking the same. So so the argument is, you as a Black person can't think that way so you're a race traitor, which means that you as a Black person have to think a particular way, which means all Black people must think that particular way, which means that they're a monolith again. So it's one of my problems with the left, it seems, and I think this is less a problem on the right. And you can let me know if I'm right or not. It seems like the left, they have these definitions that just keep running into each other. Like, is discrimination good or bad? Is racism good or bad? Is whatever good or bad? And they can't quite make up their mind, and they keep running into things where the tail eats the circle. It feels like a less of a problem on the right. But yeah.
No, I think what happens is that if it gets to the point where people, I think, are justifying their own actions, right? In other words, they can be racist, but they're righteous racists, versus they're racist because they're wrong racists. And instead of just saying the whole race thing is impossible, if someone's Black and just has a different opinion, they're just someone who has a different opinion, instead of being a coon or and it's funny because a lot of the times I'll agree with a lot of the leftist policies, and that's what I think is missed here now too, is that if you agree with the Democrat or you agree with the Republican, it's like you have to take the whole ship, or you can't take any pieces of it. I'm pro Second Amendment, pro abortion. Those are two opposite opposing views on the political spectrum. But I think if you would just evaluate each situation as it is differently, then you can come to some type of nuance. So I don't know. Maybe it's me, or maybe it's just our society. But obviously, we've become very polarized.
Well, I think there's enough. It's not obvious that the issue between abortion and gun control should be tied. There's no obvious reason those issues should be related. So it seems perfectly plausible to have view one way and never view the other way. There's no, so yeah.
I don't think there's an inherent conflict with the view, but I think but the thing is that how many conservatives, who are 2A members are also going to be support a woman's right to choose. It's because everybody's taking the full basket. Nobody's looking at each individual item and saying, well, this item which is totally separate from this other item, I can agree with or I can't agree with, because it's and you do have the issue of one issue voters, mm-hmm. right? 2A is my issue, so whatever other baggage that person comes with, I'm still voting for this guy because of the 2A guy. And the same thing with abortion. So I think maybe that might be a lot of it too. But what do you think about some of the hot topics in the news? What do you want to start? We got Cuomo, we got CPAC, we got Syria, we got Texas, we got a whole crazy.
Let's start with Syria, because it does help to highlight the hypocrisy issue. Is bombing Syria good or bad?
Well, I would say bombing, it all depends, right?
Is it constitutional or not?
Well, it is. Of course, it's constitutional. Well, I think it's constitutional in the sense of the president can respond to aggression, right? Because just so everyone knows what happened with the Biden strikes, there were rocket attacks that went into the green zone there in Syria, and the United States did a retaliatory attack against that. So people launched rockets into the green zone, destroyed some stuff, and then the United States retaliated to those attacks. So that's the Biden strike everybody's talking about, a retaliatory strike. And then obviously people see what happened today. That same group actually launched rockets into some places in Iraq. So this is like an ongoing tit for tat thing. They launch rockets, we respond. So when I'll say this, when I first got on Twitter the other day about this, Twitter blew up, right? Biden is a warmonger. Trump was, they calling Trump the peace president. So me being the astute historian of, the last 4 years, I easily brought up the fact that in Trump's first 6 months in office, there were 6 U.S. attacks, 1 per month. He was averaging 1 attack in Syria per month, right? Airstrikes. You had the Tomahawk airstrikes when he did 56 Tomahawks in Syria. He did 2 other airstrikes that same, he did 2 airstrikes in June. So, and this was in Trump's first 6 months in office. So when I brought that up, people were it just was so weird to see people pearl clutch and grab the flag and talk about peace. And then when you mention that Trump bombed Syria 3 out of his first 4 years in office, every year he bombed Syria. Then it's like, oh, well, Nate, well, it's, well, you see, well, Trump, well, no, well, it's really different. These are different types of airstrikes. It's like, what? Huh?
Yeah. No, I mean, the one of the problems is there's usually enough information or enough evidence or enough studies that you can justify either position. And so it just becomes an issue of finding the sources that support whatever your position you need to have at the moment. And so it just becomes an exercise in selecting the data to fit the narrative rather than the other way around. Because I mean, you could realistically take either position, and you could even take the position on constitutionality differently. But yeah, it just becomes, and you can almost always, and you know this well in law, you can almost always split things on facts. Because it's almost very rare to have 2 cases that are really exactly the same. So you can always split it on facts if you want to. That's how the DC Court of Appeals tried to split the Hillary Clinton thing versus the General Flynn thing. So we're going to split them on the facts. And you and I looked at it, we're like, I'm not buying that there's really a factual difference here, and you're making this up, but they tried.
I'll even say this with the whole Syria thing. Even if you just look at the facts of each one, because I think Trump's and I think Biden's were both justified. I think Trump's was justified because Trump, he was enforcing Obama's red line. Let's just keep it 100% real. Obama had the red line, chemical attacks, we strike. They do chemical attacks, they didn't strike, right? Trump got inside there. He was just kind of like, he was, matter of fact, he had criticized Obama for not, adhering to the red line, right? They used chemical weapons, and they did it.
Yeah, of course it did.
And then when they did it, Trump was like, "Well, you're not going to play me like that." You know what I'm saying? I'm not. This is you got a different guy. That's a red line. Chemical weapons or no. 59 Tomahawk missiles. Guess what? They stopped using chemical weapons, right? The last time you heard about chemical weapons being used in Syria, is when Trump sent those 59 Tomahawks and shut that down. Okay.
Yeah.
Justified. I don't care how you think about war. I think that was okay, right? Boom. And then there was the back and forth attack. Same thing here with Biden. Just look at it for what it was. They attacked. We responded. All right. They attacked again now. So obviously they're going to respond. So I think if you look at if that's where I'm talking about nuance is dead. Because that nuance that we just said, if any rational person looks at it, no matter if you agree with it or not, you can say, okay, well, both here are the reasoning for both sides. I disagree with one or two, but nobody's saying that. They're pretending that Trump never bombed Syria in the first place. And it's interesting, too, how short memories that people have, because I had to send out news reports. No, this never happened. I had to send out wiki pages.
Well, I did forget about it. I did forget about it early in the Trump administration because we were talking about this, I think, late last week, and you mentioned it. And I had forgotten about that with Trump in the early Trump administration. So, yeah. And again, I think it's the over politicalization of this whole thing. But I don't know. If Biden has like to bomb Syria like another 20 times or something like that, to catch up to as many times, and I don't think it's going to lead to any type of war. But we'll see. What do you think? Well, at the end of the day, what do you think about this whole Syria mess? Because now it seems like the boys are over there. Rockets are being launched, all that type of stuff. Well, we need to generally be more aggressive, in my view. If no other reason than as a message against Russia. I think that's where the money is really hitting the road. And the same thing with Ukraine, for that matter, as well, where we need to be a more aggressive presence. But yeah, Syria is unstable. It makes sense to me to use force to try to keep it in a more stable environment. So I didn't really have problems with using force in the Obama administration. Obama was a little bit weaker, I thought, for me on the legal case, because his situation was a little bit more outside of like the immediate need aspect of self-defense. So his legal justification was a little weaker, but from a policy point of view, it made sense to me.
Yeah.
So I don't really have any particular problem with the nature of what the U.S. activities are based on my understanding at this time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that makes sense. Let me get the super chat. I lean left, but I also like listening to other side views. If it makes sense, I will reevaluate my stance. I think we need more of that. Amen, Mrs. Nicole. And that just makes sense. I you know what? I always feel like it's, I don't know. I feel like the creators, especially on this platform, on YouTube, are, if you're not extreme right or extreme left, you really don't get anywhere. Look at it, because I think you're pulled that way. Like, look at for instance, Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin was pulled far right, right? He's pulled far right. He was far left and was pulled far right, because you got to pick a side. Who's Tim Pool? Tim Pool is supporting Trump as much as he can pretend, but he's talking about he's voting for Trump. He's a Trump supporter. He's full of Trump support, and he was a centrist all that time. Because I think for YouTube, the monetary piece of it, right? People who support you, people they don't want to hear this. My guy does wrong sometimes, or my guy does right. They only want to hear the same thing. So
I think that much is very true on the monetary aspect, and I say this advisedly because I'm not trying to make any insinuation here against Nick Ricciuto when I say this. But he, at least the way he was presenting his material on his thumbnails, at least, was giving a perception of being more of a hard right person. And he saw his channel grow from 80,000 to 150,000. He basically doubled his channel from his. Now, some of that is because of his thumbnail game. Some of that's because of his text game. Some of it might be from the nature of the presentation being of a more right-hand character. But yeah, when I try to play this, and also people don't really buy the moderated position, which is also kind of annoying, because I try to play the moderated position on, for example, the Toddy Westbrook and Katie without a crystal ball stuff, and they don't even believe it anyway. They don't even believe it anyway. So what's the point of trying? It's like, it's so frustrating.
Well, I don't think it's a position of trying. I think it's just a position of, what is it? What are we doing? Like, if you look at the facts and you see, like for instance, with this Cuomo thing, it's maybe a good introduction with the Cuomo thing. With the Cuomo thing, I think if you look at the whole situation,
yeah,
it's horrible, right? what Cuomo did was horrible. It's the cover up, right? You always get caught for the cover up. You don't get caught for the crime. The issue here was at the beginning of the pandemic. You got maybe the first couple of months in. You got people. You got a whole bunch of people, old people.
Are we talking Cuomo COVID, or are we talking Cuomo sex scandal? Or are we talking
all of it? All of it. I'm laying it in.
Carry on. Just wanted to make sure I had the right frame of reference.
So let's go into Cuomo at the beginning, the Cuomo administration. The CDC says 12 other states and New York, they go in and they say, well, we are getting hit hard with COVID numbers. So we have people who are elderly in the hospitals, right? It's taking them X amount of time to recover, but they don't need to be in hospitals, right? The issue that we're now running out to is we're running out of hospital beds, right? Where are we going to put these people, these old people who are in hospitals? They were in nursing homes, got sick, came to hospitals, and now are recovering, and now they need to go somewhere. So we got no hospital beds. We need to empty these beds because we have other sick people who are dying that need this hospital bed. So what do we do? Where do we send these people? Well, you would say, well, you could send them back home. Their homes are the nursing homes. So when New York asked, what should we do with these people? The CDC said send them back to nursing homes. Why? Because nursing homes, were almost medical facilities. They said that they would be able to segregate or whatever stuff that they said, right? That's supposedly what the order did. So the CDC approves it, the order does it, and now we find out that it was a disaster, right? You don't send the old people back to nursing homes.
I mean, at least from my point of view, I felt like we could have seen that coming immediately. It didn't feel like a surprise.
But the thing is that I asked all my conservative friends, and I'll even ask you, where do you send them now? Because you can't send them back because you can't keep them in the hospital, right? Because you need those hospital beds to save other lives. So what do you send them? And their homes are the nursing homes.
Isn't that hypothetically why they were trying to make the space in the Java Center and stuff like that?
But you know how big New York State is almost as big as Texas. Well, I'd say like half the size of Texas, but it's a really big state.
Yeah,
you can go up the Canadian border, right, from New York City. That's like 6-7 hours, a 6-7 hour drive. Yeah. So it's not like you could take people from northern New York and bring them down to the Javits Center. That's like taking somebody from northern New York and from northern New York would be like taking somebody from Vermont all the way down to Jersey or something like that. I
think some people already commute really that kind of distance as it is. Isn't the greater New York area stretch up to Vermont these days?
Oh, I don't know, but you know how big. Have you seen New York State on the map? It is huge. New York State is huge. Yeah, it's huge. State, yeah. It's not like it's nothing small. So when people make it seem like, well, they got the Javits Center. Javits Center's in New York. We're talking about things thousands of miles away. People are in nursing homes and then transporting them back and forth in the middle of the pandemic when you don't have enough resources anyway. How are you going to transport these people? So I don't think I don't know. No one has come up. Everybody says what he did was bad, but no one has given a reasonable solution of what else could they have done, right? No one else said, well, they could have done this. It's not like you can send in the hotels because hotels can't take care of those people. And all you're just doing is infecting the hotel staff. And don't forget, these people were in nursing homes, so they need specialized care anyway. So it was a disaster. And I don't think that the answer was simple, but I think if you think about it, that's not the problem. The problem was, what the hell do you do? Why hide the numbers? That's what I think is the problem. When he was just asked, what are the numbers? How many people he was selling a book? He was being praised on the thing. He had won an Emmy. And instead of just giving the real truth and saying, this is what happened, he lied. And that's
but sending people who are known to be in a particular risk category because they're older back to a home where there's a lot of old people seems like the worst possible plan. Almost anything would have been better.
So tell us what would be better. It's okay to say, yeah, that was a bad plan. But then what's the alternative? Where would you have sent them? Because don't forget, they can't stay in a hospital. Where do you send them?
I don't know. I'm not the governor of New York.
But that's what I'm saying. It's easy, and that's my only criticism. See, my criticism is not about what they did. It's about how they covered it up. And I think everybody unanimously is going to agree. The cover up is the crime here. It's not what they did because everyone can say what they did was wrong, but no one will have a reasonable solution to figure it out, right? It's like, what they did is wrong. Okay, so what would you?
I don't know what resources might be available. If there's some place with like beds or like a barracks or something that might be available or something we could convert. I don't know what's possible. Maybe we could turn some places into shelters, like we do for disaster relief. But then options.
So you're putting all the COVID people in shelters, who's going to staff those shelters, because don't forget, you still need, those are people who need specialized care anyway, right? They were in nursing homes, right? You took them out of nursing homes, put them in the hospitals, and you're taking them back from hospitals to put them in barracks now. Can they survive that? Again, I think that issue was a complicated issue, and I think people are trying to underplay that as there was some quick answer, which I don't think there was. But I think lying about it is the crime. Lying about it is wrong.
But I think people knew that he was lying the whole time, and it's only coming up now because Cuomo is not as politically necessary as he was before. Because we don't need him to fight the big orange man, who is now thankfully gone, at least to a lot of people. And this is also incidentally why this whole thing against the accusations for this sexual stuff is sticking at all. Because the way the Democrats have treated Me Too and Believe All Women seems to have a significant political component to it. When it was the woman making accusations against Biden, it's like, well, we can't do that. And when wasn't it Nancy Pelosi who was quoted respecting Cuomo, saying there needs to be due process and stuff like that? It's like, where was that when we were talking about Kavanaugh? But we have to have due process now. So it seems that there's a lot of the politics of the situation allow you to look things over or not. And because Cuomo is not politically necessary anymore, it's like now we can throw him under the bus. So now we can, if this had come up, if these exact things had come up, and as for the deaths in the hospitals or deaths in the homes, it did come up before the election, as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely.
And if this stuff with the sexual accusations, which might have come up before, for all I know, because it wouldn't have been in the reporting, maybe it did come up and was just suppressed. But now it can be like, well, now we can talk about it. Now we can talk about how he's really, really bad. So now the Democrats have to decide whether or not Cuomo is necessary or whether or not he can be thrown under the bus. Which way will they go?
This is 10 pounds from Secret Squirrel. Sorry, can't stay tonight. Had to take some sleeping pills. Don't. Hopefully, it's not the addictive type. And it's starting to kick in. LOL. Love listening to you in Uncivil Law. And give my love to Lampy. And Lampy's here with the Jason mask on. Boop. So Lampy has got the love. Thank you so much for the 10 pounds, Secret Squirrel, and have a wonderful night. I think you're totally right. I think the sexual assault stuff, though, for Cuomo is disgusting. I mean, it's just like, you got and all these, all of a sudden you got all these women coming forward.
But is it though? But is it though? Because like even for me, it's like, as much as I have the Schadenfreude element, I mean, based on what's been alleged at this point, it doesn't seem that Cuomo inappropriately touched anyone or sexually assaulted anyone. It doesn't seem like he made overt solicitations.
Okay.
Maybe he told some inappropriate jokes, or maybe he made some people uncomfortable, or he asked things about their personal life in a way to bond, and he made some jokes about them, and he didn't realize it was making them uncomfortable. So, like, if I was trying to actually adjudicate this from my perspective, I'm like, maybe that's not a problem. But now, of course, I have to say it's the biggest problem ever, because I have to expose the Democrats to their hypocrisy without exposing my own hypocrisy. So it's like, oh, okay, he's super, super horrible. This is the worst thing ever. But don't look at what I said about any issue in the past where I tried to actually moderate different things, Well, so everyone is forced into these political corners, and it's really annoying.
Let me cancel myself right now, because it's probably
cancel it.
Cancel. So I'm going to
teach us how there might be gradations.
I'm probably going to be canceled. Yeah, I'm going to
gradations of bad, and maybe some things aren't as bad as other things, and maybe sometimes we actually shouldn't believe the victim. Maybe sometimes they're not reliable. Tell us the things, Nate.
I'm going to cancel. I'm going to get canceled for saying this, right? Mm-hmm. All women don't tell the truth all the time. It's shocking. No. It's just shocking. Now, I'm not saying, nor am I implying that these women are lying, right? I'm just saying there are situations where people don't tell the truth. And in the Cuomo situation, Cuomo is alleged to have kissed someone, right? So now, in the Cuomo situation, I don't know if these women are telling the truth, but I'll just tell you the process that I think is fair for all this stuff, right? I think if someone comes and says, someone did something to me, you investigate, right? You say, okay, well, let's investigate this. You get somebody who's independent. They look into it. They investigate it, right? They see if they can find any evidence, witnesses, whatever that you need to make sure. Now, a lot of times...
Are you saying we should have investigations because #believe all women? Investigations just show that you're not accepting their truth, Nate.
Well, again, I'm saying you believe and investigate, right? And because everyone, and I've had a situation where where a woman has lied about me, right? Where I was in uniform and a woman lied and said something had happened, and thank God there was videotapes up there. We had cameras, and the cameras set me straight.
Eyes, man.
Yeah, and the person wrote a statement, signed it under penalty of perjury. When they saw the camera, tears and I would take some drug and this, and I was confused. Okay, but if it was just my word, a uniformed officer standing on a post doing their job versus a beautiful woman with tears in her eyes, tell everybody that I did something.
That's a double whammy, Nate. Not only is it a woman making an accusation, but you're a cop, and we know ACAB, man. So that's a double whammy.
But I'm saying that it happened to me. So I am more sensitive to the fact that people that in these situations, I just don't believe the person, but I investigate the claims, right? That's what you want to do. You want to investigate the claims. And Ty for me doesn't go to the person making the allegations. Ty usually goes to the person who's been accused. So just like in the law, right? If you can't prove the person's claim, then the person is innocent until proven guilty. So that's kind of the way I like to generalize, to use these claims. I think, though, politically, that's not what we do. Politically, somebody says, Cuomo grabbed my hand and I felt uncomfortable, he should resign. That's kind of where we're going with this right now. We're looking for the perfect person, right? And I'm going to say this.
No, we just this is Ben Shapiro's quote, but he says we just need to look for the half black, half Asian, half Latino, little person, bi, gender fluid, transgender, who's in a wheelchair, and ask them their opinion, and that will be the one revealed truth for all of time.
Exactly. It's like it's the one thing that I've always tried to understand in this movement, in this Me Too movement, is that sometimes people just want to jump because it's the other side. And with Cuomo has three. Like my biggest argument last week with a couple of Trump supporters was the hypocrisy in this whole thing, right? Like one guy was saying, "Oh, this is so horrible." The sausage thing with Cuomo with the sausage thing, and the woman came out and said, "This wasn't, these people are being too sensitive. That was ridiculous. I wasn't harassed." She had to come out and say, "I wasn't harassed." Give me a. And people are still saying, "No, you just don't know you were harassed. You're harassed." My whole thing.
Yeah, I've seen that before too. That's always fun. It's like, we should believe your truth unless your truth conflicts with the narrative. So your truth is I wasn't harassed, but that conflicts with the narrative. So yes, you were.
That's happening with Cuomo. That's happening with Cuomo. That's happening with Cuomo now. But I do want to say when I brought to my friend who's a Trump supporter, I brought up the issue. I said, well, listen. Cuomo, he said, Cuomo has 3 women. He should resign. He should resign in disgrace. It's a horror show, right? It's a horror show.
Did you just do this? Let's talk about Trump.
No.
Yeah.
I just played the tape. I just played the Access Hollywood tape. And then all the excuses started coming. Well, you will see if you didn't mean. And I said, listen, he said, grab him by the B, right? They said, listen, this is what you do. That sounds like an admission of sexual assault to me. If you're on the left, it's admission. If you're on the right, it's locker room talk. But I got 20 something women. I got 5 court cases. I got his wife saying that he blanked her in the court legal documents. I got 2 women saying that he straight up did this, right? So do you not support President Trump? He said, no, they're all liars. All those women, all the 20 women who says Trump said, they're all liars. The 3 women that says Cuomo did it, touch their hand. They're all telling the truth. That is the inconsistency.
It has nothing to do with my political priors in any way. No. I have just independently looked at this, and I have concluded that all the people telling things about Trump are lying, and all these people are telling the truth. It's just my assessment of the situation from a pure blank slate proposition. Okay, that sounds plausible.
And that's the inconsistency that kills me, right? Because I said the Trump stuff was horrible, and I said the Cuomo stuff is horrible. I would think any rational person would say that, but when people start saying, well, this guy's transgressions are okay, the 30 of them, but this guy's 3 is not okay because he's got a D by his name and this guy's got an R by his name, or I voted for this guy. There's a moral outrage.
Yeah, and starting to get hypocritical. As we were saying, we can find the same thing with the Democrats too, and I'm sure you know this. And
Of course,
we can see it with Biden.
Al
And
Franken.
one woman making the I mean Al Franken. He was in politically
Biden.
convenient. Exactly. Biden. I mean, we don't have to look far if we want to look about double standards or even perhaps more the point than double standards. It's about selecting the evidence and selecting the information that will support the narrative. So maybe it's not even double standards. Maybe it's just selection bias. But either way, it's like the ability to find the information you need to support your narrative. There's a lot of incentive there. And especially if you get someone in a contradictory position, because you're like, how do I maintain both positions at the same time? So people want to be, according with what they said before. So yeah.
No, don't get me wrong. I do understand there's always going to be differences in stories and stuff like that. But I'm just saying, as someone who likes to report on this stuff, like me and you try to do it, we just try to report the facts and just let people figure it out for themselves. But
that might be good.
But my whole thing is, and that's what I think the news media fails at doing. But people, the thing that edges me out and the thing that upsets me the most is just the hypocrites. It's really honestly the hypocrites. Like I can call out the Al Frankens, I can call out Biden. The Biden victim, the way the news media tried to hide that from us because he was a Democrat was ridiculous, right?
Or the way they hid the Hunter Biden story. I have very little doubt in my mind that the exact same information with the exact same offer of validity came out about Eric Trump. They would have run that till the end of time. If the exact same information came out about Trump, but now it comes out about Biden, it's like, oh, we can't report on this because it might influence. I mean, yeah, the bias and the selection and the lack of self-awareness because they don't see it, and sometimes I think they really don't, which is amazing. They don't even see the lack. They don't see that that they're being so special. It's like, well, this situation is really different. In this situation, are being really careful and are pleading. I'm like, I'm not sure about this because it seems to be pretty reliable. It can't be that. It's just that it seems to be some convenience here, but the whole situation. But yeah.
You know what? I want to ask this person in the chat, right?
Yeah.
About now, Al Franken did step down when he was found out to have had those pictures. Even though it was when he was a comedian, and he had the picture of he was doing all that comedy stuff. So now a comedian, he was doomed to fail. But
the thing that I want to ask was he was making this gesture near a woman.
Yeah,
he wasn't even touching her.
No, remember, then you had the other woman said that he grabbed her butt and that type of thing. Said at the carnival during the picture, it was that type of. So yeah. But even though the gesture, but I'm going to ask this question. I think Al Franken, his thing was politics because the House and Senate, right? They was very, very close. I think they had like a very slim majority in the Senate. Do you think if Al Franken was in a state with a Republican governor who would replace him with a Republican senator?
Oh, no.
Do you think he would have stepped down?
No.
I'm talking about, and I'll ask the people in the chat because Al Franken was in Minnesota, right?
Yeah,
where it was a Republican governor, and you knew if he stepped down, he was going to get a Democrat to replace him, with a Democratic governor. But if Al Franken was in a Republican state, do you think he would have stepped down? No. I don't think he would have. I don't think he would have. I think people think that because of the politics. But the politics if the politics were he wouldn't have stepped down. He would still.
I want to move from the politicians to another issue because just to show that this is not a political issue inherently, is we've got the upcoming trial for Derek Chauvin. Chauvin related to George Floyd, and we've done some analysis from the evidence that's available, but the trial is actually going to be starting, and I'll be at least trying to give opinions along the way. But there's a group of people, and a significant group of people, who will not accept any outcome other than the one they've preordained. And they will say it's not justice if the non-preordained outcome. Actually, this reminds me of, I know this is a bit of a tangent, but I've been a member of the ACLU and not from time to time. The last time I was a member of the ACLU, the reason I stopped becoming a member of the ACLU was because there was some cop who was being investigated by a grand jury. That grand jury did not indict. And the way the ACLU came out about it was strongly implied, if not outright said, that, well, this is a travesty of justice. This is the only proper income. I'm thinking to myself, the ACLU, aren't you guys about individual rights and due process and all the rest of it? So, why are you so hell-bent on saying if there was no indictment, it must be because of corruption? So that pissed me off.
Yeah.
But going back to the Chauvin Floyd thing, it's like I mean, I don't know exactly what the answer is, not for least of reasons, because we haven't heard the testimony exactly. Will they be able to really show it was due to fentanyl exclusively? Will they be able to show that cops had were a causal element of that or not? But it's like, I'm going to try to analyze it, and there's going to be a whole bunch of people who will, no matter what the verdict is, will say it's completely just because of the factors that support their side, and will say it's completely unjust because of the factors that support their side. So it's as much a trait of the human condition as anything else.
It's funny. Scalia gave an interview one time, with, I think, one of the Supreme Court roundtables, and they asked him, "What's the role of the court in the American system?" And he said something he said, "The court is the most unliked branch of government because the court, unlike the other branches, tell the people what they don't have the right to do." Right. Like this violates the Constitution. So even your elected representatives, the executive, it tells them you can't do this. And that's what, but the court is supposed to look at things without any type of that political pressure, and just that's the reason why they get their appointments for life. I can just look at this. I don't have to worry about you. I just have to look at this issue and just give you that opinion. And I think with the Derek Chauvin thing, I think there's going to be legal arguments made, right? Because we all saw what we saw. Yeah. And no matter what, it's like, I always think about this as like, if you go to a bank and rob the bank and someone has a heart attack while you're robbing the bank, that's felony murder, right? You killed the person, right?
It might very well be, yeah. If you can show the heart attack was because of the stress of the incident, which seems pretty likely, then yeah.
But only go unless you can, because how can you prove that guy just happened to have a heart attack when you came and robbed the bank, right? They're hitting you with felony murder charges. You killed that man.
You're in a tough position.
Yeah, even if let's say you go into that bank and robbing the bank and put somebody and they have a stroke, right? They happen to have a stroke after you punch them. Was the stroke participated? I mean, was it from your punch, or was the person about to have the stroke anyway? Guess what they're going to charge you with? Yeah, felony murder, right? Right.
Yep.
So I think in the Chauvin case, if you see someone who's walking around lively, about to drive a car away, right? They pulled him out of a car he's trying to drive away. And then 20 minutes later, after knee is on his neck and he's dead, you're blaming fentanyl. I don't, there are too many things I think you can attach to this to get to murder. But now, do I think you get to first degree or second degree murder? No, I think you're talking about, something depraved and different. Maybe you're talking about a negligent homicide, somewhere in that. Because I think this officer was trying to do a job, and in doing it recklessly, I think you got a reckless homicide. Then you cause this life. But I think what happens with our society and with BLM is that they say, well, this cop committed premeditated murder. That didn't happen. You know what I'm saying?
Well, not premeditated. No, that seems impossible. Yeah.
Well, they say he knew him, and I've heard some of the arguments.
I've heard that before, but that just seems impossible. I don't credit that.
The left pushed Franklin to step down. They eat their own. That's true. They do eat their own kind. But except if you're running for president. If you're running for president,
but here's because I've done some analysis of the Chauvin thing, and here's how I see it from where I'm sitting right now. And a lot of this is going to depend. This is really going to come down to the medical testimony. That's where the rubber's going to hit the road. But here's where I think we are right now. So the first thing is that in Minnesota, you can actually use you can use the felony assault as the predicate for the felony murder, which is bizarre because
it's just a little bizarre.
You can't do that in like almost any state. And I had to look it up, and I actually read the Minnesota Supreme Court. I'm like, yeah, apparently the Minnesota Supreme Court says you can do that. So I'm like, okay, that's a thing.
Well, hold on. But because the assault wouldn't be, it should be, because the assault.
They don't have merger.
Oh, they don't have the merger doctrine. All right. So everybody understands the merger doctrine. If all murders are technically some forms of assault, and so you can't have a murder without an assault. So to make the assault the predicate for an enhanced murder charge doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's like eating its own tail. It's lifting it up by its own bootstraps. You're using the murder as the felony for the felony murder, and like you can't do that. But apparently in Minnesota you can, because they don't have merger doctrine. They're like one of 3 states that doesn't have it. So I'd looked that up. I couldn't even believe it when I looked it up. So then we just have to find the underlying felony assault. And so the argument's going to be that at some point in this exercise, he formed an intent to commit an assault, and you can show that a whole bunch of ways. Although the procedure of the knee on the neck was authorized in some respects, he didn't do it the right way. He didn't follow the right procedure. He did it for much longer than the manual. And there's other evidence that would suggest his subjective intent. And of course, the video itself is pretty damning with that. And people, of course, are telling him at the time about how he's not being able to breathe. He's saying it. Other people were saying it, bringing it to his active intention. Even his fellow officers are saying it.
Yeah.
So you can show that subjective knowledge, and you can show the willful defiance of that to get to the intent element. So I think the prosecution's case looks pretty good. Now, the defense's argument is going to be that, as best as I understand it, that he had so much fentanyl in his system that it would have killed him. There was some stuff in the autopsy which implied it. And then the medical examiner was asked at some point by defense lawyers or otherwise, if you had found someone dead with this amount of fentanyl in their body, what would you say the fentanyl was the cause of death? And he basically said, yeah, without anything more, this amount of fentanyl would be reasonable to think that is the cause of death, which isn't exactly this predicate here because we do have other information to the contrary. But they're going to try to say he had so much fentanyl in his body, it was going to kill him. But here's the problem: at the end of the day, what they have to legally show is that would have killed him in exactly that moment, no matter what the police did, and that seems impossible. Yes. Of course, the prosecution also has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, which gives the defense a little bit of latitude. But given where I'm sitting right now, the reason it's second degree murder is because it's felony murder. The reason it's felony murder is because we can use the assault as the predicate felony, even as bizarre as that is. I think we can get to the intent element based on the factors I said, and the defense is going to have a tougher time with the fentanyl defense. But of course, the probabilities are going to vary based on the actual testimony. So I think right now the best answer is guilty. But that answer might change. But either way, people are not going to accept the answer because they're not. I think there's a whole number of people who won't actually go through this constructive analysis and try to actually analyze the elements and be like, okay, how does this actually break down at every step along the way, and what's the best answer? So
yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I think your analysis is brilliant. I think the only thing I would add to it is that his death. It's weird when you're talking about this felony murder thing because it doesn't have to be the cause, but just an aggravating factor.
Yeah, it just has to be an aggravating cause.
Yeah, so it could be the fact that the fentanyl was going to kill him, but the fact that this guy
wasn't going to kill him right then.
Yeah, but as soon as that guy put his hands on him and put the knee in his neck, then that made it, instead of him dying when he made it home, he died here. Well, now you have the aggregate, which is weird, but the law is like that, though. It's the guy at the bank who's about to die in 10 minutes. Yeah. If he dies at the bank when you're robbing
the logic is those 10 minutes weren't yours.
Yeah,
they were his, for better or worse. They were his 10 minutes. They're gonna have a lot of problem on this. I mean, the law is, if you aggravate it by 1 second, I mean, again, this goes down to being able to prove it, which in a practical sense can be problematic. But if they die 1 second sooner because of something you did, even if they would die 1 second later, you're still guilty of murder because you've done the thing. So this is eggshell skull doctrine, which all of our law students have heard about. Basically, you take the victim as you find them. If they are weakened, even because of something they did to themselves, and you do a thing that's criminal, and they are more harmed than the other person would be, even if they caused that reason among themselves, you're guilty for the greater liability, because you basically accept, any liability that will emerge. So to give a different example, suppose that you are setting a fire, and the fire is going to burn in particular ways. Well, once you set that fire, you basically accept anything that might happen from that. If it happens to be raining or the grass happens to be wet, then not much damage occurs. But if it happens to be a really dry day and it happens to spread and it's the Great Chicago Fire of the 19th century, then you're going to have a much bigger legal problem. you have the same liability. You accept the liability for your act. So basically, what the defense has to prove here is that Chauvin would have died exactly what he did, no matter what the police did. And I'm like, okay, well, good luck with that strategy.
Yeah, it's just tough one to get the videotape. Just so everybody is clear about it, because I see somebody said about thin skull. The Eggshell plaintiff is, I don't know if you guys remember Mr. Glass from what's that movie? With Bruce Willis. Remember Mr. Glass? If let's say someone has this rare condition where their bones are extremely brittle, easily broken, right? So, and let's say you bump into them, right? You're running and let's say you're robbing the bank. Let's go back to robbing the bank. You're robbing the bank and you push them. And generally that push, 99.9% of the people, that push wouldn't have done anything to, but that push breaks that guy's back.
Yep.
Well, now that's felony assault and battery, or that's actually probably even more about that. So that is what Unbreakable, somebody mentioned in the chat, but that's what the Eggshell plaintiff is. Now you can't say, well, hold on, that wouldn't have hurt anybody else. That guy was just, his bones were brittle. They'll say,
and then the law says sucks to be you.
That's
the law thing. It sucks to be you.
Exactly. So but it's fair though, because it's, you take the plaintiff as you find them, and that's why people with heart, that's why if you see now a lot of the bank robber movies, you'll see the bank robber say, if you are taking heart medication, sit down and relax. Do not don't let this thing excite you. Don't let this thing excite you. So
I've not seen that before. I've not actually seen the
Watch Heat. Watch
yeah.
watch the movie Heat, and at the last bank robbery, when they get to the bank, they said, if you have, the guy gives a speech, lay down, blah, blah, and if you have heart medication, or if you're sit down and calm down, we're here for the bank's money. We're not here for your money. Don't get excited. Don't get excited.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I mean, but people are not going to accept the outcome. They're already, Minnesota is already telling people to board up their businesses in case there's riots or whatever. It's like, if there's a not guilty verdict here, which is definitely a plausible outcome at this point, because again, we haven't heard any of the testimony. I'm guessing based on the information I have, what seems most plausible, but the information we hear trial could change that analysis. And if it turns out that it's not guilty because the jury has some doubts or whatever, there's going to be rioting and people will be like, oh, this is a travesty of justice. I'm like, are you sure it wasn't just justice because we applied the right legal standards to this? I'm not even saying it should be guilty. It just seems the best.
It seems
right
like
now. It seems like the most plausible answer at this particular moment. We'll see how it develops.
Let's. It's interesting because now they're talking about they had the summer of love with the Black BLM. Then they're talking about the winter of hate with the Trump riots. So what do you think about this whole? All right. So for those of you who don't know, tomorrow is supposed to be the QAnon Q day, right? Trump is supposed to be reinstalled.
Oh yeah,
in the Capitol tomorrow.
It's the original date of the presidential inauguration. That's right. Before they changed it to January 20th. So President Trump is supposed to be inaugurated tomorrow.
That's
as the 19th president of the United States.
What is going to happen? What is
Absolutely
going to happen?
Nothing.
So they said they were supposed to be storming the Capitol again and all that stuff, but they're concerned now. What do you think about now? I know this is off brand, but what do you think about the Capitol Hill? But I've been watching the hearings for the past couple of days. What do you think about their excuses? So for those of you who don't know, the Capitol riot, everybody's blaming everybody. So I'm asking Kurt now, what do you think about the excuses for the Capitol riot?
Well, here's what I think. I think people are responsible for themselves, which also I'd like to point out is a pretty Republican idea. People are responsible for themselves. People are accountable to themselves. People should hoist themselves up by their own bootstraps and not expect things from other people. Seems to be a pretty conservative, pretty Republican idea that people are accountable for their own actions. So what I think is the people who stormed the Capitol should all go to jail. That's what I think. And like, they're like, and I'm just over here like, la, 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 I don't care. La, la, la. I don't, it just doesn't matter to me.
No.
I'm trying to hold it consistent. I felt this way about. I feel the same way about the Antifa BLM riders. Let's lock them all up. They all suck.
Well, see, my tact is that I like to be consistent. I'm just consistent with my thinking, right? For the whole summer, I was saying There's a difference between rioters, looters, and people protesters, right? Rioters and
Mhm.
looters is one thing, protesters are anything. Protest, matter of fact, is in the Constitution, right? First Amendment. You can go out there and protest grievances against the government. It said this is your right, your fundamental right to do it. Go do it peacefully, and you got no problem. So BLM doing all that, that's fine. The rioters and looters, they go to jail. Same thing with the Trump protest at the Capitol. Peaceful protest. Trump said go peacefully protest. They're outside. People rioted. They stormed the Capitol. They should go to jail. Agreed. But I also think there is a level of incompetence that occurred with the law enforcement and Capitol Police that day.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, there's responsibility there too. Although I don't want that to be understood in any way to absolve the rioters.
No, of course not.
If you leave the door of your house
Yeah.
open and unlocked in a high crime neighborhood, it's not necessarily the greatest idea. But then no way absolves the thieves.
Oh no, of course not. Of course not.
Yeah.
I'm not. My issue is not with the people who did the crimes. They should definitely do the time. But will you always look back, like whenever we had something like this happen, it's anything crazy, we always look back and say, well, what did we do wrong? How could we involve it? Or what mistakes did we make that were obvious? And at a point, I think the level of incompetence here with the Capitol Police and with the government was incredibly. I just don't know if it's crazy. I just don't know what happened. To understand that when you had the BLM protest earlier, where everybody was there, all hands on deck, right? We all see the videos. No issues, right? No issues. But then the Trump rally, the Trump riots, where you had all this hearings, everybody here, you knew everything was coming. It came and then everybody's acting shocked. They took over the building. And then to sit there and hear the Capitol Police chief say, well, we were, our only job is to protect the Capitol building, but we never actually trained to guard against, people coming into the Capitol building. It's like,
why not?
If they're paying you to protect the Capitol complex, and you're telling me you've never trained the cops to actually protect the Capitol complex, like, what? Is this true? It seems to me that the level of incompetence at the government has to have been extreme to the level in which it makes me question who the hell we're putting in charge for our protection. Because if these idiots couldn't stop this, then what else are they messing with?
How hard is it to get some red team and blue team into this? You get some red team, blue team, you get half your officers to plan an attack against the Capitol, and the other half have to defend against it. How hard is this? You can do some red team, blue team stuff, and just figure out ways to attack the Capitol. Now you figure out how to defend them against the attack of the Capitol that's coming. Good luck.
I've done these simulations before. It was it's easy to do. It's not like it's hard. We practiced it because I've been involved in an active shooter situation before. So even before that, we had our plan. And it's funny because when the shit happens, the plan goes to hell, right? Plans go to hell.
Which is why you need a lot of training and a lot of different scenarios, because when you're doing it on the fly, nothing that you've done is going to exactly match. But hopefully you've done enough things that it looks similar to that you can on the fly cobble something together that makes sense.
Yes. Because you're working off the moment, of the facts that you have at you now. But one thing I always found is that the Capitol Police, for number one, for them to know you have thousands of Trump supporters coming, to not have enough cops, to not have it just was too perfect of a storm. And the Pentagon saying that they didn't have the National Guard. They waited 3 hours because they were afraid of the optics, but they weren't afraid of the optics when Trump wanted to cross the street. And and they use flashbangs in that scenario. But again, it just, and what it also leads to? It leads to the
maybe
left.
That was one of the reasons they were afraid of the optics, though.
But again, I would say my first thought when he said that was they were probably afraid of the optics because of what happened before, and they were trying to be careful and not to have the same thing. Oh, look, they're just beating up on poor protesters. But on the back end, now you have the left saying, well, this is blatant racism, right? When two black people go up to protest against the thing, you got thousands of National Guardsmen and you got thousands of Trump supporters who happen to be white going up in the building, and you got 1 or 2 cops to stop the building. That's what the left is portraying. And I think the right is portraying the incompetence of the law enforcement. Now, the reasons or whatever have you, whatever the talking points are, they are what they are. But do you think there's any legitimacy to the argument that race was involved in the planning between the Capitol Hill riots and the BLM protests?
Well, with respect to the BLM protests and Antifa, they have more models to work against based on other activities, so they can make better predictions about the relative risk of violence or threat profile based on other things that have occurred. So they do have that factor, and this was more sui generis, so there was less to predict off of. But I do think that I mean, if they knew, as seems to be the case, that there were going to be people coming to the Capitol to protest, it seems that they were vastly ill-equipped for that, even if they thought it was going to be peaceful. Just a show of force can help it be peaceful, you know?
Yeah, just that's all you needed to show of force. Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, I think I don't know if it was racism. It's not my favorite conclusion. I do have a bit of bias, and maybe it's an unfair bias, but I'll admit to it either way, that I'm really reluctant to pull the racism trigger, because I usually look for pretty much any other answer other than that. And I'm just like, yeah, it's just general incompetence. It's what I usually go to is it's incompetence. It's just it's a false sense of security because, you know, things have been relatively easy, so they haven't been training as much as they have. You know, they think that they understand the threat profiles and they have a certain zone, and no one's trying to challenge that. So I think, you know, I usually go to incompetence rather than malice as my first idea.
Yeah, I think it may be a little of both, in the sense of, I think, racism, I think if it had anything to play, I think that it was probably a minor role. I think what makes more sense is that BLM has a reputation. That reputation is that, you know, we have Capitol buildings, we have this, we have that, and in June, you had a different administration in there, right? You had you had the same administration in there who were very antithetical, and people were a little bit more frightened of what could happen, because don't forget, we were all watching the stuff, and I think the news media has a part to play in this too, because they were only showing us the destruction and mayhem that was happening at BLM. You weren't seeing all peaceful BLM protests. You were only seeing the fires and the looting and all that stuff on national TV. You know, there was another riot, like I remember here in New York when they took over the city. So that's one thing, and I think that, you know, people, you would say, well, we want to be prepared, because if something let's say if something went bad at the BLM stuff, then people would have been asking the same questions. How would you know what this was going to happen? I think with the Trump scenario, I think they just got caught off guard. I think they just got caught off guard. I don't think it happened to be about race. They understood Trump was going to make his speech. They thought that the perception of the Capitol building being such a well-protected building would stop people from wanting to challenge that. And when people did eventually challenge it, they just were unprepared. But I think did racism have a part to play? I'm not sure, but I will say this: I am less inclined to say it was racism, but I wouldn't be shocked if it played some role. But, you know, if it be minor or not, you know what I mean?
It's hard to believe that these people were going to these because I've heard some of the testimony, not all, but they've said that, you know, these people were warned orally. They had some in-person meetings. There was emails. You know, they tried to give them warnings about all of it, and it still fell off. So, like, how can you go to these things and be like, yeah, there's this threat, and be like, yeah, it's business as usual? I don't know.
One of the other things too is that one of the police chiefs was black, right? So you can't really say he's racist, right? He's the black police chief that said that, you know, he wasn't prepared. You know, I'm not saying he's racist, but also too, it just didn't make any sense. Somebody like the police chief, who happens to be black, for DC. He said, well, you know, the FBI, because they were saying, well, didn't you guys know? And they were like, we didn't know anything. And they were like, well, hold on, the FBI sent you this email. And this email said, they're coming, they're violent, this. And his response was, if it was that serious, I would have expected a phone call. I wouldn't expected an email. But then it's like, really? They sent you an email saying, be prepared for all this crap. And you said, because they didn't call you, didn't take it seriously. They sent you an email detailing it. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm agreeing with you in the sense. I think it may be less malice. And I don't believe race. I believe if race had any part to play with it, it was a minimal part. But I can see this just being incompetence and less about race.
Yeah.
Let me see So we talked about it. So what do you think at the end of the day? We're at the end of our stream. What do you think about now Trump and the Republican Party? Because it seems to be a civil
Well,
war within
I
the
don't know
Republican
whose
Party.
genius of the idea was to bring out a golden calf to the CPAC. You
It was
know,
wonderful. It was wonderful.
whose genius idea was that? It's like, this is like such bad imagery. I don't even know where to start. And worshiping at the golden calf, it's like, man, this is, I whose genius idea was that? Is my remaining question. And then Lindsey Graham says, well, this is Trump's party. Still, I mean, you know, if he wants to run, you know, he'll run. But he has it in the bag. I don't know about that. But CPAC didn't go as well as I had hoped. You know, the whole thing is stupid.
Well,
Not for least of reasons that Trump is not particularly conservative,
No,
especially
not
not
at all.
ideologically.
No, he's not. Well, there are a couple of things I saw that, you know, obviously the attack of the mask mandates and the whole attack on Fauci, which again is just like, you know, like when I see science and please correct me if I'm wrong. For me, science is ever changing. So at the beginning of this pandemic, right? Do X, Y, and Z because it's a new virus. You don't know. They you know, you're trying to figure everything out on the fly. So things that they've told you earlier on, they may change, right? We need to do this, we need to do that. But then later on, they say, well, hey, guess what? Masks, you know, we didn't think masks work. We do know masks work. I think Fauci, by telling everyone, well, I lied to everybody, because that's essentially what he said, right? I lied to everybody. We knew masks would be helpful, but we didn't.
Yeah,
tell
he
you
did
the
say
masks
that
would helpful,
exactly.
right?
So that's not science.
Because that. So I don't think that's science. I think that's politics. But people were like, I got people who are upset because I've said that, right? Fauci obviously lied. He's playing, you know, he shouldn't have played politics. He's just been truthful to everybody. Or he should have let the politicians play the politics. He should have let them say it and then not say anything, not just openly lie to people, because it makes me not trust. You know, how do I know that you're not playing politics with me at this time when I expect for you to get science? I want politics from the politicians. I want science from you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think, but when it came to Trump's downplaying it, people were saying, well, isn't Fauci's downplaying the same as Trump downplaying? Remember when Trump said how with Bob Woodward, he admitted that it was a lot more serious. This was there's a big problem, this. But he admitted that to Bob Woodward, saying that, you know, but he said he didn't want to have a panic. And that's what the difference between,
which also seems to be kind of what Fauci's motivation was too. He didn't want people to buy up too many masks.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, no matter Trump is a politician, and the politics I expect from a politician. But if Fauci is going to be presented as a doctor, as this, and telling me this is the science, and the science says masks don't help, and then 2 weeks later says, well, I lied to you because I just didn't want you to buy a mask. Masks actually do help. I don't know if you're lying to me now, or if I don't know if you were lying to me then. And that's the difference between Fauci.
Fauci's credibility is pretty shot. You know, I've said that before. He's not a reliable person. You know, once you've been found out, and he even said in an article that I read from on stream before, he all but said that he'd lie again if he thought it was justified by external circumstances. So I'm like, you know, you're not a reliable person here. Yeah.
Especially on science.
And of course, the Democrats who say science is the only thing that matters. When Fauci said, well, it wasn't Fauci who said it, but it was the director of the CDC. The woman who's the director of the CDC. She said at a press conference in the CDC building with the CDC logo, she said, yeah, there's no real reason to inoculate teachers. In particular, kids can go back to school. And Biden said she was saying that in her personal capacity.
But that's Kelly
CDC, as the head of CDC at the CDC headquarters with the CDC logo behind her. She was speaking in a personal capacity when she said, "We don't have to vaccinate teachers."
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't believe that. Again, I wouldn't have believed her. I would have believed her that she was talking with the CDC.
It's flipping the script whenever it's convenient.
Yeah, but that's politicians, though.
Yeah,
politicians. So yeah. I'm not saying that. I think the failure is that a lot of people don't think their guy lies. The only other guy lies. That's the problem. But let me get the super chat. You see, Ricada got struck for archiving his 8 hours of CPAC stream. Oh, I didn't know that. Ooh, he did. How long you figure it will be safe to keep that topic in your thumbnail and coverage? I don't know. I'm gonna keep it and see what YouTube says. This is probably gonna get demonetized because we've gone through a lot of topics from assaults and everything. So I'm not too hopeful that this is on a money making stream. But hopefully Nick. But Nick has to be careful, and all those conservatives have to be careful because they threw Giuliani off. It's really, they're not playing when they talk about this election stuff. There's no evidence and stuff like that. They're really sanitizing. They're sanitizing the platforms from that type of talk. So I would just be if this is your sole source of money and making money, then you got to do what they say until you got a YouTube beta or something like that. But it's sad to say, but
I was having this argument with someone else earlier today, and I got a little snippy with them, which I was they're angry for, because I was looking at covering a particular topic, and they're like, if you cover that topic, you'll be blackballed and your channel will die. I'm like, but it's just another legal topic like any other legal topic. And they had to explain to me that no, because YouTube hates us. And after being talked to for a while, I eventually had to concede the point, which made me sad, because YouTube is preventing me from talking about particular issues. It's like, why should certain things be off bounds? I don't know. Did you see that thing between Viva and Dr. Drew and whomever else it was on Ruben's channel?
Oh yeah. I didn't watch the whole thing, no, but I saw pieces of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not the only one, obviously, who has this problem, but it's this. When we're talking about things and we're having these grand debates and we're not sure what the answer is to some of these issues, and even in the election with Trump, there were some things that were not as certain, or some things were a little unclear, and you couldn't express any kind of doubt at all, it seems, without being attacked. And it's like some things are ambiguous, and things not everything is 100% clear. I mean, we know the answers to some things, but it's very, very frustrating.
Oh yeah. I think at this point in time, we all have to just be we just got to do what we got to do. Like me, my content. It's weird because like I was telling you earlier, I was telling you before, I feel like I'm in this weird space, where I want to do the police breakdowns, right? Because I think when you do those police, and I think they're valuable to both the community and to people, because when you want to start thinking about, well, what do the police? How are they trained? What laws are involved with with judging whether this police officer is guilty or not? How is a judge and a prosecutor going to evaluate whether this officer is justified in what he does? That's what I try to bring to the table, right? And it's difficult because YouTube demonetizes all that stuff, right? YouTube says you can't do that. You can't teach that here because of the graphic nature, and because and because it's too political. And it's weird because because the thing that does the most good and helps people really understand the nitty-gritty of the law is a thing that you can't make money here on YouTube doing. And I would think that YouTube would want to do that. But again, this is why now that this is not this is not about truth. It's about advertisers. And if advertisers say, we don't want you to say X, Y, and Z, then YouTube is not going to let us say X, Y, and Z, because that's why they say it's advertiser friendly.
It's partially advertisers, but I also think there's some genuine corruptness there in trying to spread particular messages and particular narratives, which also is in the same vein as the advertisers. But there's something else there too, beyond just pure money.
No, remember when YouTube did, before they had the whole YouTube ad apocalypse, they were put ads on everything, right? If you watch YouTube, you got an ad. But now they're, advertisers like, we don't want our ads on the flat earth stuff. So guess what? Flat earth got banned, and we don't want our stuff on this. This got banned. So, the fact that I said flat eurth here is going to probably get that little symbol on the bottom.
Yeah, you probably get
flat
the
earth,
thing below. It says flat earth is a debunked theory. Like,
so it just happens. And you know what? One thing I always find too is that they never fact check the left. Like that
No.
video, the Breonna Taylor video that Young Turks did with it had full of lies, right? Full of lies. It was the wrong address. They shoot her while she was sleeping. The whole bag of lies.
Some people are still saying they shot her while sleeping. They're still saying that.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you. The people are still saying they shot her while she was sleeping.
Yeah, I'm still seeing people saying that.
Well, it's it is what it is. And the fact of the matter is that I still got people arguing that it was the wrong. Oh, well, just because they had it on a warrant doesn't mean it was they filled it out wrong with the wrong address. I was like, did you see the surveillance footage of them looking at an apartment? Did you see them follow the guy into the apartment to pick up the package and take it to the drug house? This was not the wrong address. They knew they had surveilled this place. They had the property. They said this is how it was. So I don't know. It's people, I think, but again, it gets back to what we were saying before. I think sometimes people don't want to know the truth. They just want to know what's best for their political side. It just is.
Continuing, this is why from time to time, as I was saying before the channel, this is why from time to time, I'm like, I just hate everybody, including my own side sometimes, because everyone kind of sucks.
Yeah, but I'll say this, this is no, well, no, I have no love for Trump. You guys know that. But I will say this. He has done the best, I think, from the last, if you talk about the last, you got this Trump, Bush, and then who was before Bush? Bush 1, right? It was Bush 1, Bush 2, and then Trump. Those are the three Republican presidents in the past.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Yeah, right? I would say out of those three, Trump has probably been the most consequential in Supreme Court picks, right? Because he got 3 Supreme Court picks. I'll say also he's been the most consequential in just changing the narrative, changing the political sphere, right? He's changed it from, and I think, and he's made, I think, the Republican Party, instead of being a party where there was less hope of winning elections, now it's like, well, we can actually win, but we can win on some of our core values. But now it's just, what are those core values? I think it's hard now, because when you have states like Texas and stuff getting bluer every couple of years, getting bluer and bluer and bluer, eventually this entrenchment in American nationalism has to extend to, either you have to make other people feel like they're nationals, like they're American nationals. Like Bush 2 was trying to do that with Hispanics, right? He spoke Spanish, and he was trying to say they're Americans too, to get them into that conservative.
He must have succeeded, because now they're saying that they're white.
Who?
Because
Hispanics?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, especially the Cubans, right? Because so many of them turned out for Republicans. They're white now, so yeah, mission accomplished.
I think Bush would. I think what Bush did right. I think with Florida was different. Florida and the Cubans, they know socialism. They, as soon as they pegged the Democrats as socialists, that was it. You weren't voting. They're not voting for the socialists. I don't care. What party you're in. You say socialists to Cubans, they're not voting for it. They lived under Castro. But I think when it comes to now the newer Republican Party, I think the only way you get, because you have to grow the base with minority groups, right? You have to get, but it's difficult, because if I was a Republican strategist, I wouldn't be going after the black vote. Why? Because I think the black vote is not ready for the Republican message, right? I just don't. I think we've so ruined that, and I think it would be hard for us to get some of the Latino vote. But how do you change that model? Because every year you get more of these people thinking that you're against them. More of them get to that voting age, and more, and now you get, instead of losing by 2 million votes, 5 million votes, 6 million.
The Republicans picked up something like 22 or 23% of the minority vote, all told, last time.
I believe so. Yeah.
That's pretty good. I mean, it's a record, and I mean that's pretty good. So the Republicans
I'm just talking about
direction.
If you're looking at just total votes here, for instance, look at when it comes to the popular vote. Thank God we don't pick elections by popular vote. If you just talk about the popular vote, the gap between Democrats and Republicans on the popular vote has been widening more or less every election. So even though Trump won, still he lost the popular vote, and he lost it more this time than he lost it last time. And actually before that, it was even worse. And that gap is starting to grow. And that gap, the only thing that's keeping that gap from giving us total Democratic rule is the fact that we have these 50 states, two senators in every state. But the problem is that those people now from these liberal states like New York, like California, where are all the people from California going? They're going to Texas.
They're going to Texas, yeah.
Where are all the people from New York going? They're going to Florida, right? So now you have this thing where those Democratic strongholds, people are fleeing from them, right, for freedom. But that in turn is turning those mainly Republican states more blue. So that's the problem. I think the Republican Party is going to have to face, because they got a good thing. Hey, our policies work. Come Rogan, SpaceX to come to Texas with a whole bunch of Democratic voters. Yeah, how that I think is going to change the game. Let me get this final super chat. Florida voted Trump because Democrats are socialists. That's what I agree. And they also voted for $15 minimum wage, pushed by said socialists. Go figure. Interesting. What you were saying, Kurt? Sorry.
No, I wasn't really saying anything, I don't think.
Well, so I don't know, but I think right now, if you're in Texas is going bluer and bluer and bluer. So now for our last story, what do you think about Texas being open for business?
Well, I'm pretty excited about it. Yeah. So for those of you who may not be following every moment of what's been going on, the governor has said that as of, I think, the 14th, or as of next week, maybe. So maybe sometime like the 11th or something, but whatever, relatively soon, that there's no more mask mandate in the great state of Texas. So, and businesses can be open at 100%. So I'm pretty excited about that, because hopefully it means I get to see some more live music and see some more cultural events. I'm pretty excited about that. Hopefully it means that some of the places I really want to go, like the Elephant Room, will reopen, and that would be nice.
So now, is there any fear about COVID or anything like that, or is it just like, hey, we're just gonna live our lives and deal with it for whatever happens?
Well, I don't have any fear, at least, because at this point, it's like, I'm so tired of the whole thing. As there's so many people, this whole situation is completely ridiculous, and people were not meant to live like this. So it's like, you have to measure life a lot of different ways, and one of those is quality of life. And this whole situation has been mind-numbing for so many of us. So if it means, I'm gonna go to a rave, I'm gonna get with a lot of people, it's gonna be great. It'll be fine.
I think this is interesting, because it'll be the test of the science, in the sense of, let's say this does happen. The science says it should blow up, right? People should die. Hospitals should be overrun, and eventually, and it should be, if everybody just opens up the way it is. So I think it's going to be an interesting test of the science. I'm fearful, because I fear that the science has gotten me fearful that these new strains and everything, and people are not all inoculated. But on the other side, I do understand that, it's people are getting, COVID weary and want to go outside and want to just live their lives again, because don't forget, we've been doing this for almost a year now. It's almost a year. Yeah. So
it's been almost exactly very tiring, day, really, because it would have been. And I moved here in Texas the 23rd, and it was about a week after that. So it's almost a year to the day that.
Yeah, we've lost a year of our lives to this virus. We honestly, that's what happened. We've lost a year of our lives to this virus. Everybody worldwide. It's funny, because even the life expectancy went down a year. But I would say this. I would say, God bless you guys, and hopefully things work out. But I'm just hoping. I believe Texas is going to be fine. But if it's not fine, it's just this is not one of those things where who's to blame is going to be acceptable.
If it actually turns out completely fine, I don't know that it moves the Democrats' narrative. Obviously, if it goes to hell, it will help the Democrats' narrative a lot. But if everything turns out fine, I don't think it moves the Democrat narrative 1 inch.
Well, I think
trying to be hilarious.
It's in the you guys. It's in the worst case scenario file. Where, let's say if everything goes great, right? Let's say everything goes great, then they'll say, well, it's the vaccine, right? They'll give you some excuse why everything goes great. But then if it all goes, but while everyone else, like that was the issue that we had here up in the Northeast with Cuomo again. It's funny. Cuomo locked up everything in New York, so we had all our restaurants were gone, but all the restaurants in Jersey, right across so we all just went across the bridge of Jersey to the restaurants. They didn't blow up. They didn't have any craziness. So eventually, people just said, "Well, why don't you open up in New York? Because Jersey's been open and they haven't had the problem." You know what I'm saying? The doom and gloom, you said should have happened already, because it's been more than 2 weeks. It's been like a month, and they haven't had that doom and gloom. So I think sometimes the Democrats, I think they want to be ideologues themselves, not understanding.
I think it's a problem. I think it's there's a pox on both of the houses. I
agree.
Yeah. So it's all crap.
Oh yeah. All right, guys. Well, listen. Thank you guys for joining us for this hour and a half tonight. I really appreciate it. All you guys who came here and let us. Are you gonna take the vaccine? I'm trying to get this Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Everybody says don't take it because it's
only 66% approval. If obviously, if you're going to take the vaccine, I'd rather get one of the ones that's like 90%. The Johnson & Johnson's only 66.
But you can take them both though, right? It's not like you can only take the Johnson & Johnson.
I don't know the answer to that question. I haven't heard one guidance one way or another.
Because I would say I'm going to take whatever is available.
I don't think it stacks though. I don't think it's like, I don't think you get like
105%. No, what I'm saying is no, because I think they're two different vaccines. One is like a DNA vaccine, one's an RNA vaccine. So I'm thinking you take one works one way, one works another way. But even whatever happens, I'm going to take whatever's available, because it was 100%. What was it? Johnson & Johnson had a 100% effectiveness rate against hospitalization. So if you take the vaccine, you don't go. You may get sick, but you're not going to be able to. You don't have to go to the hospital. So that's why I'll take that vaccine. And just some protection is better than none. But I think true. Johnson & Johnson is it is what it is. But whatever they make.
I'll probably wait to take the vaccine. Not for recent reasons. I probably couldn't get it even if I really want to, because of how it's being rolled out. But also, I want to see. Normally I'm not a vaccine skeptic. Normally I don't have this problem, but given the time frames and everything, I'm a little bit more cautious. So see how it works out. Maybe
before we leave, I'll say this. So I'm sitting there chilling with my mom, and we talked about the vaccine. So then she's like, "Oh, let's watch a movie." We watched I Am Legend.
That was a good movie. They screwed up the ending though. The alternate ending that they did for that movie was much better than the one they ultimately went with.
But
so that pisses me off.
She was like, "I'm not taking the vaccine after. I want to wait."
Yeah.
She's afraid that everybody
vaccine that causes cancer and kills everyone.
She's like, "No, I'm gonna wait for the vaccine. Let me let all these other people take it before I take it, because I don't want to be a monster." Then she has the nerve to tell me if she turns into a zombie to kill her. I'm like, "Mom, don't worry about that." But because
I'll definitely kill you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're gone quickly.
And then you get that wonderful quote: "You killed Zombie Flanders. He was a zombie."
Well, listen, guys. For all of you out there who stayed with us tonight, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Stay well, and we'll be next week on Kurt's channel at 9:00 at this time, talking more trash. Get the vaccine. Let's see what happens. And as always, I will see you next time. We're about to go offline in 3, 2, 1.